So, Rhondalynn Korolak, welcome to the Business Advisory Show. How are you today?
Great, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And here we are down in the NAB Village at 700 Burke in Melbourne, where, of course, Accountants' Big Day Out will be in November. Thanks to NAB for hosting that right around Australia.
Yay, NAB!
And Rhondalynn, of course, you're one of our special guests at most of those events, which is pretty exciting as well.
Thank you. Yeah, almost all of them.
Yeah. Now, in our role as a journalist, on behalf of the accounting industry, I feel like we're kind of releasing a bit of a news-breaking story here, because I think we're looking at possibly, dare I say, the hottest intellectual property on the planet in 2019 for accountants and advisors that want to learn how to price their value. Right? And because value pricing, of course...
Generous of you, but okay.
Yeah, well, I think that might be the case. And of course, the massive workbook here, which is hot off the press.
That's the Mac Daddy. That's
yeah.
The big boy.
And this has got an enormous amount of stuff in it about how to actually price your value. Now, why is that so important for accountants, not just on a compliance level, but moving into business advisory? This is a critical thing.
Yeah, look, pricing is the number one thing. So as I explain it, pricing is actually the fulcrum in your practice, right? It's the point at which you exert pressure to get leverage on your practice. So if you're trying to grow your practice by marketing and selling, you're never going to get there, because you're merely going to attract more people who probably don't pay you based on the value that you bring to the engagement. So to me, it's all about getting your financial model right. And your financial model means you need to charge based on what value you bring to this engagement. So that's what I'm about. The second aspect of it is, I don't like the terminology compliance and advisory. One of the reasons I don't like it is I think it creates a divide. It gives a subliminal perception or unconscious perception that they're two different things. I believe that who we are as bookkeepers or accountants should have always been holistically helping the business to grow, to be more successful, to improve, and that we should have never divided the jobs into these two separate tasks, because people will say things like, oh, I only know how to do compliance, or I'm not sure if I can do advisory. Yes, you can, but it's about figuring out what keeps your clients up at night. What is the stuff that is making these people lose sleep? When you can identify that and quantify that and price that effectively, what you will do is create enormous impact for the business that they will pay you a premium price for. But more importantly, you begin the journey of removing yourself from just the basic kind of work to do the stuff that really matters. So I actually think that I wish we never created these terms, right, of compliance and advisory, because I think we need to bust out of them. I think that what we now do should be this new thing, and it shouldn't be called advisory or compliance. It should be called helping your clients to make more money doing what they love and getting paid a premium price for doing that.
And that's value.
That is value. It's the essence of value, and value is confusing to a lot of people, because I hear people saying really bad stuff, right? Stinking thinking, I call it, right? So to me, it's, how do I get the price I deserve? How do I get my clients to pay me more money? How come all my clients are price conscious? Do I need 3 packages or 4 packages? Those are bad questions. We should be asking, how do I create more value for the customer? Because that's what the whole thing is about. How do we create more value for the customer, and how do we capture more of it for ourselves? And that is a huge, chasm that we've got to jump over, because to capture more value, we have to think differently than we currently do as accountants about how we run our businesses. Because we're in a business, right? An accountant or a bookkeeper is not just a profession, it is a business. We are business owners. And everyone, in my opinion, is very focused on profitability and all of these things, which do not necessarily mean your practice is worth more. They do not mean you've captured more value.
And as valuable as profitability is for the client, if it's a profit report which has got the wrong trajectory in terms of the longer term cliff edge for the client as well, it can be misunderstood by their business owner.
Profit to me is a bag of buttons. It's useless. You cannot take profit to the bank and deposit it. because they would think you're cray-cray, right? They're going to think that you don't know what you're talking about, and they're right. It's just a thing. It's a construct that we have created to figure out how much tax you owe the tax department, right? But at the end of the day, it's about cash flow. So if you want to actually have a practice, like most people out there do not want to die in their practice, presumably, right? People don't want to just kick the bucket and that's the end of it. You want to build something that is valuable, that you can sell to somebody or pass to your family or whatever your, whatever floats your boat, right? But at the end of the day, to create a valuable practice is not what used to be 20 years ago. So in the olden days, people used to value practices by saying, what's your book look like? Let's take a look at all your clients and how many clients you had and profit and all that stuff went into the value calculation. That went out the door. That's gone. It's long gone, right? Now we're talking about things like, what's your pricing power? What is your revenue quality and predictability? What about churn and retention? All of those things are fundamental. How much of the value do you capture that you create for your clients? All that stuff's far more important and far more valuable, but I will bet that 99% of accountants aren't measuring that stuff. If I went out and asked an accountant right now, okay, how much value do you create for your clients? They couldn't tell you. They do not track how much value they create on every single engagement for every client. Well, if you don't know that, how can you possibly capture more of that value for your firm? You can't. It's ludicrous.
Yeah. And the biggest frustration that we hear from accountants and bookkeepers is not feeling valued. But feeling valued comes from the value that they create that they can quantify, right?
Yeah, look, I guess I think about this a little bit differently. When I hear people saying that they don't feel valued or, I'm not getting paid what I'm worth, I say, at the end of the day, if you stay in that stinking thinking, you never will. Because at the end of the day, it's actually about what your client values. Right? So we need to step back and get a little bit, a hold of ourselves and say, you know what, yes, I understand that we all feel inadequate in some parts of our lives. And these are things, if we thought like Richard Branson, we would be Richard Branson, right? But we don't. We're all a work in progress. However, we need to get outside of our own fears. For me, step one of pricing value is control your own fear. How do we get beyond those fears? But how do we start to really focus on what does the client value? What's it worth to the client, right? Is the client thirsty? If so, how thirsty are they, right? Because the value of the engagement is driven by the thirst of the client, not by how much you think you're worth or how valuable. That's why I get incensed when I see people focusing on my brand. I'm going to rebrand my practice ABC Advisory. Go for it. It's not going to accomplish anything. You shouldn't even be marketing yourself on social media and rebranding yourself if you haven't figured out how to create and capture value, because it's not going to stick to your ribs, right? It's not going to produce anything. And there have been plenty of studies out there that have shown that the brand doesn't necessarily lead to greater value and worth in the greater global economy. It doesn't.
Yeah, and one of the things I hear a lot is, I want more A's and B's rather than C's and D's, which is a very old methodology, or and what I believe is wrong with that is at least it's a definition, but it's a definition of what you want rather than what you're offering and creating and delivering.
You get the clients you deserve. If you've got D's and C's, guess what? You created them. Yeah. You're not adding enough value. One of the stories I talk about in Pricing Value in the book is about this plumber that I had, right? And it was really funny because when he did his portfolio analysis, which is part of the early steps of pricing value, is segmenting your clients, he uncovered all these clients that he thought were duds, right? So this is an accountant that was dealing primarily with plumbers and accountants, and it cascaded down. So it was really fascinating because when we do this thing, he started realizing that, oh my God, I've got all these C and D clients, but they're desperate for cash flow. They're not paying me because they don't have any money to pay me. That's on me. As the accountant, I'm responsible for that because I'm the person that has the answers that can help my clients who are tradesmen to actually get more cash flow. So if they are C and D clients, it's because I'm not doing my job properly. And that's a complete mind shift. It's like, hold on a second, there's nothing wrong with those clients. They have enormous potential for you to take them from where they are to where they want to be and get paid handsomely for that, but you haven't done it yet.
Yeah, it's a great point.
It's you.
Yeah, and so this definition of business advisory, it's very loose and it's a bit overwhelming to some. What does it mean to you?
Look, I think it triggers a lot of people. You know, when you post it on social media, there'd be 1,000 people that would say, you know, trusted advisor is a bogus concept and I don't like it. And people get like, you know, it's almost like one of the taboo subjects, really. It's become that in our industry. Look, my sense of it is this. Advisory to me is about three things. It's about having the capacity and the ability to communicate stuff to layperson clients in a language that they understand. It's about the ability that you have to gain leverage on those clients and whether you're able to inspire them to take action in their own business, right? Because if you are still doing all the work, it ain't advisory, right? That's my, you know, so I don't actually care what the work is. Yeah. If you're still doing it, you cannot possibly call it advisory because it only becomes advisory when you inspire and empower them to be accountable and to take action to fix the problems in their own business because it's not your business, it's their business. So we have to turn the tables. Like right now, you know, for me, one of the core foundational skills or things that I look at is this. As accountants, we have a certain skill set and we have been rewarded and promoted and we do well in our profession because of those core skills. But they are the exact polar opposite of the skills that we need to succeed in this advisory role, right? So if you are controlling the living daylights out of your client engagements, you're still over here. Yeah. Because you haven't learned how to collaborate with them to achieve the result that they need to do. So it's about control versus collaboration. It's about things like accuracy, right? Cash flow is right or wrong. There's only one way, well, direct and indirect, but cash flow is either right or wrong. There's no 1,000 ways to compute cash flow to get to the answer. It's right or wrong. But in the business advisory space, there could be 5,000 different ways to get from here to there. It's about, you know, managing uncertainty. Yeah. And accountants are terrible at managing uncertainty. Right? If you think about it, we are 100% accuracy focused. Yeah. We cannot make quick decisions, or we don't. And most of them do not know how to manage uncertainty. So it's about how do we learn these skills? And the good news is, some people are predisposed to be good with numbers, and some people are predisposed to be good with selling. Anybody can learn these skills that I'm talking about because they're essentially coaching skills. Yeah. They're not selling skills. You don't have a sales problem in your business right now. You don't even have a pricing problem. You have a value problem. You have an impact problem. And to cure that, you must learn some skills that are easy to learn, right?
Yeah. Look, one of the things I'm seeing a lot, and the MYOB conference recently, then XeroCon and Sage earlier in the year, and what I notice is that I think that there's a bit of a mistake or a misinterpretation that technology is going to be the panacea or the silver bullet that just rapidly projects success as an outcome for an accountant or a bookkeeper, and I just don't think that's correct.
No. The most powerful app in the accounting ecosystem lies between your right and your left ear. We need to bloody engage it, right? At the end of the day, high tech isn't the answer, high touch is, right? So why are we all so focused on this app and that cloud platform and blah, blah, blah? Those are diagnostic tools that help to give us information. It is about what we do with it. What we do with it is a fully high-touch situation. Yeah. It's about how do we interact with our clients? Do they trust us? Can we get leverage on them? Can we get them to take action? Mm-hmm. That is far more important than I plopped an app down and it magically fixed everything. There isn't an app that exists that can fix cash flow. Not a one. Because it comes after. Yeah.
Well, the app can only simply diagnose it, forecast it, or give you some information.
That's it. Yeah. The real magic and the real genius is in what we do with our clients to get them to where they're going. Because if you think about it, let's just say that you did a cash flow forecast, right? And everyone's so cash flow forecast, crazy, right? So you do the cash flow forecast, and this happened to me. When I first started coaching, because this is like almost a decade ago, I went out to my very first client, and there was no cloud accounting back then, it's a decade ago, with all these spreadsheets. And I had made all these beautiful forecasts. The very first thing that this woman said to me, she has an aged care business in Kew, right here in Victoria. She said, I don't know if I can, afford to have you as my coach. I might have to quit because I just lost my biggest client worth 30% of the revenue. So all that work I did was completely useless. It was rendered completely useless in 2 seconds by that woman, and it was all about how are we going to react to that? How am I going to help her circumnavigate this monumental thing that just happened in her business where she lost this big client. How are we going to do that together? Because the app didn't get me there. Well, there wasn't an app, but the spreadsheet didn't get me there. The forecast was useless. And that's the problem. Too many people are focused on selling the forecast and the app, not selling that I hold the hand of my client and I help them to implement. And sometimes I kick them up the pants when they aren't doing it. I hold them accountable. That stuff, there's far more power and far more, lucrative chargeability over there than they are selling a bloody report.
Yeah, and I know an accounting firm on the Sunshine Coast, and they pick up $30,000 to $40,000 per annum clients on referral because they hold the client's hand.
Yeah, the client doesn't care how much time it took you to do something. The client doesn't care which accounting software you use, and the client doesn't care the apps. The client only cares that they got to send their kid to private school this year, or they got to take a vacation for their family, or pay their mortgage, or whatever the hell is important to them, right? The client cares about the result and the impact. Doesn't care about all that other stuff.
Yeah. What do you think about the future of the industry? Because I think that there's clearly a convergence of accounting and bookkeeping, and possibly even financial advice as well. What do you think the next 3 years holds for the industry itself?
Look, I think that we are going to see a lot of technological advancement, for one thing, beyond what most of us can even fathom, right? And that is scary because it's so easy for us to get distracted by that. And there's nothing that we can do about it. We can't stop it. We can't accelerate it. We can't do anything about technology. What we can do is something about ourselves. And it worries me a little bit because what I don't see is a lot of accountants actually investing in themselves and in their team members to help them create more value and capture more value for their clients. I see them being distracted between going to all these conferences. And the conferences are wonderful because you get to hang out with people and see people you haven't in a while and you learn new things. But at the end of the day, you've got to come back. The tires have to hit the pavement. You've got to implement stuff in the practice. It's got to result in you actually growing your practice or something magical happening. And I'm worried that we have too much busyness. We've got way too much busyness. Everyone's too busy to do this and too busy to do that. At the end of the day, there's always enough time to do everything that's worth doing. And it's about figuring out what is worth doing in your business and doing it.
Yeah.
And being held accountable, because so many accountants want to do it on their own. I mean, think about this. If you yourself as an accountant, if you're not willing to invest in yourself and you don't have a coach to hold you accountable, what right do you have to ask your client to pay you to do that job when you've proven through your own actions that you don't even value it?
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
In other words, I'm an accountant or bookkeeper. I don't value coaching myself. I'm not on a trajectory where I want to go.
I know everything.
But I'm going to give you advice and charge you for it.
We don't know everything. And when we do know everything, we need to give ourselves a shake-up and go back to the drawing board, right? We need to constantly be learning. We need to have more open mindset that, you know what, we don't know it all.
Yeah. Now, what I love about this is we've got an actual book which people read.
Yes.
But then there's also something pretty monumental here. If we hold the two up as a comparison, if you don't mind grabbing the workbook and have a look at this monster over here. This is
pretty thick.
It's massive, and this is the entire go-to-woe, how to literally do what you did very successfully and then realised it was unique intellectual property. And you've had a long relationship with Ron Baker, the guru of value pricing, for many, many years, and we've all followed him, and you're very close to him as well.
Look, I just was lucky enough that I reached out to him and told him what I was doing, and I asked him if he would help. And beyond my wildest imaginations, I never imagined that someone that I held in such high esteem, and pretty much the whole industry does, let's be honest, the guy is really the grandfather of all this stuff. I shouldn't say that because I don't want people to think he's that old. He isn't, he's very young at heart, right? But when I approached him, I couldn't believe how generous he was with his time. So he's literally edited the book for me twice and walked me through things and provided, invaluable advice on how I can make it more powerful and more valuable and impactful. And then he, of course, reviewed it. So off the back of all that, I thought, what I hear in the industry more than anything is everyone reads Ron's books. And they are huge, right? They're like textbook things, and they're very, very deep because he is a very smart man. And one of the hardest things is that not everybody's at his intellectual level, right? Yeah. You know, he's talking very deep about, you know, the subjective theory of value and all. It's, you know, it reads like a textbook. And a lot of people are probably having difficulty understanding, well, how do I do this? Yeah. Like, I get it sort of academically or theoretically, but how do I do it in the practice? So I created this for that purpose. So I thought, if I were going to guide somebody, but I couldn't be with them face to face, what would I say and what would I do? What scripts would I give them? What checklists and templates? And how would I teach somebody to do what I've learned to do over like 10 or more years in the practice? How would I teach somebody to go at the beginning and rethink the way that they organize their practice to create more capacity? Because if you're busy right now, how are you going to create more value if you don't have time, right? Yeah. So how do you reorganize your practice to create more capacity? How do you measure success and remunerate your team members? And then how do you niche down? How do you actually go out into the marketplace and start talking to people? What do you ask them? Because you can't just go, you're not a McDonald's order taker, right? You can't go and just say, hey, you know, do you want fries with that? You know, let's talk about your payroll. We have to go deeper than that. And so I teach that. I say, okay, these are the questions I would ask if I were meeting with you and trying to get to the heart of value. And then how do we quantify it? How do we figure out what the deal breakers are? What's going to make Bob walk away from this? Because when we give Bob the pricing, it has to include a component that directly addresses what we know is going to cause him to walk away. Because if we fail to do that, we can't price the value. And so this is just a step-by-step guide. It's just me talking to you as if I were sitting right here with you, teaching you step-by-step how to do it. And so this is my way of sharing the knowledge and helping to move this forward, is the how-to, right? I'm never going to be, you know, as smart as Ron Baker, or, you know, I won't ever probably understand pricing to the level that he does. But I'm about taking his genius and figuring out, how do we communicate that to the masses? How do we simplify that and create a templated step-by-step systems? Because accountants love systems, right? Like, nobody likes to wing it in accounting. We all like to know that we have to do step 1, then step 2, step 3. That's what this is. It's my way of reducing it to a proven system that if you do it, will have a high likelihood of getting you to a premium price for what you do. Plus, making you feel a hell of a lot better for what you do. Like, when you create more value in your interactions with your customers, right? You feel better. Yeah. Right? Like, there's nothing worse than thinking that people don't value you or you're not getting paid what you deserve. When you see that value being created and you hear back from your clients that, wow, this changed my life, it changes everything for you as a human being, right? Because to me, accounting is a calling, right? Like, I don't think of it as like a job. To me, it's about, most of us got into accounting because they're good with numbers, right? Yeah. I do what I do because I love cash flow, right? But to transcend that, the tangible thing that we do and change lives, we have to be able to help our clients to realize the impacts of this stuff. And so that's just kind of what it's about, really.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, and I love it when a client says, hey, write whatever you want on my testimonial, we'll put it on my letterhead and I'll sign it. That's when you know you've delivered value. Yeah. So we've got some amazing tools here, and of course we're dragging you around to at least 3 of the 4 events for Accountants Big Day out in November, which is really exciting. For accountants and bookkeepers out there as well, and business coaches thinking about your value proposition, I think this is probably the hottest intellectual property on the planet, and yet I'm selling my own deep down as well, as you know. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm very proud to be associated in terms of being able to bring this information to the world. This is so awesome, and good on you for getting out there and traveling, you know, away from your home city.
It's a big month for me, right? So I'll be in San Jose, doing being the cash flow expert for QuickBooks at their global conference. Then I come back and I go to the pricing summit with Ron Baker right here in Australia for the first time ever. Everyone from Vera Sage and everyone's coming to Australia for that, and then we go on tour. So it's a big month.
It is indeed. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks.
And watch this space and get involved. This is really hot stuff.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Welcome.